identifying a inside bar at a potential pivot point. So we're going to produce a signal on the inside bar here, but also this inside bar needs to be the third bar in a sequence here. So for example, so we have bar 1, bar 2, and then our third bar needs to be the inside bar here. So this isn't actually an inside bar. Let's see, is this one? Yeah, this actually is an inside bar here. So this is a good example here, right? Bar 1 is, I guess if the high is higher than the engulfing bar and the low is higher than the engulfing bar, right? So the engulfing bar here is going to be bar 2. This is an engulfing bar of the next bar. So this isn't an engulfing bar of the previous bar, right? So we don't know this isn't. So in real time, obviously, you don't know that this is an engulfing bar yet, right? So the engulfing bar here of bar number 3. So bar 3 is the inside bar. And there's another requirement here. So for the inside bar isn't actually technically a inside bar because the two lower wicks need to be equal to each other. So we need to have a double bottom here, exactly equal to each other. And so if the two lower wicks are equal and the high is lower, right, than the previous bar, so we're kind of calling this an inside bar just to simplify terminology here, but it's not technically an inside bar. Then so when the two lower wicks are equal, then we'll generate a long signal, but also the first bar, right, has to be above the second bar here, right? So if price is stepping down and we get an inside bar, then we'll generate a long signal here. And going back to our bar numbering here, right, so for here, if the bars are moving higher, and then we get a inside bar here. So again, you'll have to use your imagination. Remember, this is just for illustrating the bar counting here. So on our third leg, as some traders might call this, the third leg of this pivot formation here, right? So the inside bar needs to be this third leg here of the pivot formation. So in this situation, we'll generate a short signal on the third leg or on the inside bar here. So this is an example for a short, and this is an example for a long here. Right. So basically, take this example and just rotate it, flip it upside down there, and that would generate a short signal. Okay, so with that explanation, let's start building. So actually, let me bring this back up. So this is going to be a bunch of comparison solvers, right? This is all setting up a bunch of comparison solvers. So for a long signal, right, we need the two low prices equaling each other, but also we need the high price, right, of the current bar to be less than the high of the previous bar. We're going to have, comparison number 1, and then comparison number 2, and then we need some more comparison solvers to compare bar number 1, right, to bar number 2 here. So we'll have to compare these highs and have to compare these lows. So it's a bunch of comparison solvers that we're just going to chain together. All right, so BloodHound open, and let's add a comparison solver. All right, so for a long output, we're going to make sure that the low of the current bar equals the low of the previous bar. And for a short, we're going to make sure the high of the current bar equals the high of the previous bar here. So for you programmers out there, you'll notice my bar indexing is off by 1. And that'll be apparent here in just a moment here. So we're going to set input A to price, and we're going to set input B to price. So let's see. So for a long, we're comparing the lows here. So for the long output, let's set this to the low price. There it is. And then set the short to the high price. And our look back period is going to be left at 1, right? So that's the current bar. So that's why the bar indexes here for those programmers is at 1, not 0. So because I'm putting the look back period up here. All right, so for input B, we're going to match what we have above here. So long is using the low prices. The short outputs is using the high prices. And this time, the look back period is going to be 2, like so. All right. And next, we need to go into the rules window here. And we're using the equals condition, right? So we want the low of the first bar to equal the low of the second bar. And let's see if that ever happens. Yeah, here we go. Well, yeah, so we have 2 highs here. We have 2 highs matching. All right, here's a bunch of examples. There we go. So we have 2 lows matching there. Okay. So there's the lows equaling lows and the highs equaling the highs. And so now let's actually generate the next comparison solver, which will compare the opposite bar price, right? So in the case of a long output here, right, the current bar high needs to be less than the previous bar's high, and vice versa for a short. All right, so let's see here. Yeah, I'll just add another comparison solver. So I was wondering if I copied this, if it would save me any time, but actually I don't think so. All right, so for a long output, the high of the current bar has to be less than, there we go, less than the high of the previous bar. All right, and it's the opposite condition for the low prices. All right, so let's go set this up. So we're going to set both of our inputs to price. There we go. And this time, the high prices here are being used for a long output. Right? And again, so just to kind of recap here, why is the high prices being used for a long output? Well, looking at our image, right, we already did compare the low prices, right? The low prices have to be equal. So now to make sure this is a inside bar, now we have to compare the high prices. So for a long signal, right, this time the high price needs to be lower or less than the previous bar's high, right? So we compared the lows equal and the highs equal, right, in our first comparison. So now we're checking the opposite side of the bar price there. All right, so we have our prices in, and remember input B needs to be a look back period of 2, like so. There we go. So now let's open up the rules window. So for a long, the current high has to be less than the previous bar's high. All right, and let's reverse this condition here. All right, so these two conditions are going to be opposite. Click OK. Right, so here we go. So look, this high is actually above the previous bar high, so no output here. Yeah, so all these highs are stepping higher, so there's no long. So sorry, when the high is less than the previous bar high, we get a short. So if the high prices are going down, we get a long output, and if the low prices are stepping higher, we get a short output. So that's a little bit of a brain twister there because everything's kind of reversed compared to the way you would probably traditionally set up filters like this for any other signal. All right, so we have our inside bar conditions set up here. Right, so we have the two comparison solvers. Right, so that's comparing our signal bar, right, which is the inside bar, to the previous bar, right, the engulfing bar of our signal bar. So let's see if we actually have any signals on the chart. I was a bit worried we may not have any signals, but all right, here's one. Actually, this is exactly what we're looking for a long signal, right? So once we incorporate this second bar back, right, and the second bar back actually, works good as well, right? So the high is higher than the next bar, the low is higher than the next bar, right? So the bars are stepping down, and then we get this, technically not an inside bar, but this inside bar with a double bottom low price here. Right. There. And let's see if, well, we can make an exception for this one here. So the lows are stepping higher, but our high prices, they all look the same. Actually, hold on. No, actually, this is an engulfing bar of the next. So this is an inside bar, and this is an inside bar again. So actually, this will get filtered out. But again, this is more about. So the question here, again, the question was really about how do I identify this? I'm trying to think of a good term because this isn't really an inside bar. I guess I'll call this a double bottom, double top inside bar here. So the question is about identifying this double bottom or double top inside bar, right? Which is the third bar in here. So let's see here. All right, so this is bar 1 and 2. Or sorry, bar 2 and 3. Sorry. That's bar 2 and 3. So now let's work on bar number 1. And where's my example? There we go. So there's my nice example to work with here. There, I'm going to turn off the auto scaling of the Darvis there. Okay. All right. So when we get this, so when we reach the signal bar, now we're having to look back 2 bars, or at least look back 1 bar and look back an additional bar here when we're comparing the highs and the lows. Right. So let's see here. Let's add another comparison solver. Connect that up. And let's see here. All right. So for long, I'm going to say, right, the high of this second bar back has to be higher than the next bar, and the lows has to be higher than the next bar, right? And of course, you guys can adjust this any way you want, but the point is, that since the question requires a 3-bar sequence here, so since the question said that this inside bar here, this double top, double bottom inside bar, is a third leg, right? So that means we need to do some kind of comparison on bar number 1. So that's what we're doing here. So I don't know exactly what those rules are here, but I'm just going to say, that So for a long, the bars need to be stepping down. And then for a short, the bars need to be stepping up. So let's see here. All right, so again, this is going to require two comparison solvers, right? So for a long signal, right, this first solver is going to look at the high prices there. And then for the short, actually, yeah, I might change my mind on this. You know, there's usually a couple of ways here that we can do something here. So, all right, yeah, actually, I'm just gonna look at the high prices here for for this first comparison, and then the next comparison solver will look at low prices only. All right, so let's put in the high prices here, and let's adjust the look back periods. There we go. And so let's see here. So we need to reverse. Let me double check that. Yep, we need to reverse the comparison conditions there. And all right, so here we go. So when the, well, let's see here, we have a short. Oh, yeah. And remember, we're looking back several bars here. So things aren't, so you have to take the signals and kind of pull them backwards to see what's going on here, right? So this short here, right, the lows are going down, right, down, 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 right? So these lows going down, I'm sorry, all right, I'm starting to get tongue-tied here. So these highs going down, that is the long output here, right? So this long output here is coming from these highs stepping down, right? So again, if we're on this bar, why does this have a long? Well, because remember, it's looking back to the previous bar and the next bar after that, right? So our highs are stepping down. So bingo, we have a long output here, right? And so why do we have a short output here? Well, that's because it's looking back 2 bars, right? It's looking back at these 2 bars, so the lows step higher, right? So here the lows stepped lower, but this short is coming from here to here, right? There to there, and there to there, and so on and so forth. Next one, next one. All right. So we know we have the high set up correctly. And let's see this. I should mark this. There we go. So that is where we expect the long. All right. So we have this long output because the highs step down. And the long output on this bar, right, is coming from these 2 bars there. All right. Okay, so now we have the highs. Let's set up the lows here as well. And let's see. Yeah, this time I will make a copy of this there. And this copy works because I just need to replace the high price, all the high prices, with low prices, right? Because the condition, right, being stepping up or stepping down, right, greater than, less than, are exactly the same here. All right. So now I just need to go into all the price types here and set these to low. And I can actually double click on these, and that'll switch down to the next selection in the menu here. So if you double click on these prices, it just walks down the list on the menu there. So that's basically an interface. It's nothing specific to BloodHound, but that's just how programs kind of work there. All right, so they're all switched to low prices. So let's take a look here. So we have a long output, and that is coming from, right, those two. If I go back a bar, so we have a short here because our lows are stepping up one bar back. So now we have a long again because our lows are stepping down, right? And if I go one more back, right, our lows are stepping up again, right, so on and so forth. So let's see, these three long outputs in a row here. Let's take a look at those, right? That's coming from these lows stepping lower, and then these lows stepping lower, and these lows stepping lower, but then, right, this low steps higher. And so so these lows start stepping higher, and so that's why we have these two short outputs here. All right, so we're good to go there. So now let's get back to our AND node. So now I can include bar 1, 2, and 3. So all we got to do is connect these in here, like so. And there we have it, right? There is our expected long signal right there. And yeah, remember back here, we almost had a short somewhere. Oh, here we go. Yeah, it was right here. So we almost had a short there, but this actually was this was a inside bar, compared to this bar here. So we didn't quite get it. Ah, here we go. Good. So we do have some short signals. Yeah. So there we have it. All right. So we actually have a couple of bars stepping up here, right? So let's say maybe you wanted this to be a 4-bar sequence, right? Bar 1, bar 2, bar 3, and you want to add in a bar 4, then it's a matter of copying these solvers, and you just adjust the look back period, right? So you knock this up to 3 and knock this look back period up to 4, right? So make a copy of these, and then you can introduce another set of bars there. All right. But also, I'm going to see if I can find an example. So let's say sometimes our third bar, our first bar might be where the highs might be equal or the lows might be equal, and you want to build in that exception here. So I actually want to find where that actually happens. It may not. Yeah, I may not have an example to work with. Yeah, it doesn't look like I'm gonna find any examples. Maybe there. No, not quite. Yeah, I'm not finding any examples because these are filtering out what I'm looking for. All right. Well, this is, yeah. Sometimes finding an example just doesn't work out. So let's, yeah. All right. So let's go back to our screenshots here that were sent in. Let's see what might be reasonable here. Yeah. All right. So maybe the first bar might also have an equal low here, right? So we might have 3 equal lows in a row, and that's acceptable, but you need the highs to step down, right? So yeah, all 3 highs here are stepping down, but the lows can be equal. Then let's see here, what would we adjust? Right, so going back to our solvers here. Let's see here. So this is a long. So if the lows are equal, then we go to this solver here that has all the low prices, and we go into the rules window here. Right, go into the comparison rules window, and so for the long, right, they can be less than, and just add the equal condition there. And then if we flip this upside down, then it would be the highs being equal. So where would we go to make sure the highs are equal? Right. So that would be this solver, right? This solver has all the high prices. So let's go into the rules window here. And so the highs are generating a short. So now this greater than would include the equals condition. All right. So for the highs, right, the short output would include the equals condition. And then for the long signals, right, go into that rules window. So this time, for the long signals, the lows would include the equals condition there. So, yeah, don't have any examples of that. But, sometimes drawing a little image for yourself can help you just mentally think this through here slowly, right? Because, yeah, sometimes you just don't find examples on the chart, but, finding examples on the chart is definitely the best way, to go in and adjust things and see if you got the signal, if the signal shows up, where you're expecting it. All right, so let me go back in here, and I'm going to take out these equal conditions. And let's see. All right, I think that does it for this question. All right. right, let me see if there's any follow-ups on this. All right, yeah, Wayne is wanting to see each of the comparison solvers and the rules windows. All right, you bet. So, all right, so the first two comparison solvers here are comparing. Those are comparing bar 3 and bar 2. So actually, let's go back to this screenshot here. So the two comparison solvers on the top here are comparing bar 3 with bar number 2 here. But of course, the way indicators look at things, this is actually bar 1, this would be bar 2, this would be bar 3, right? So the numbering system, for programs is actually in reverse order here. So the numbers, right? So the numbers are in reverse order. So this is actually bar 3, right? And yeah, bar 2 is bar 2, 2 is 2, but on these others, 3 is actually bar number 1. So, all right, let's go through these here. All right, so the first solver, the low price is used for the long, and you can actually tell by the naming. So the naming convention I like to use is I always put the long signal conditions in first, and then the short signal conditions next. So most of the time, this is actually pretty rare where you'll see lows and then highs. Typically, what I do for my naming convention here is I will do something like low, high. So the low is for, so I'm using the low price for long signals, and then I'm using the high price for short signals. So that's my kind of personal naming convention that I like to use there. So, all right, anyways, let's, there. So as you're looking at the names, right, you can tell what is in price type long and what's in price type short there. All right, so lows and highs, and then the rules window here is we're using the equal condition here. So for the lows, we're using the equal condition. Sorry, the first one, the naming has equals in it. So that tells us that the rules window is using the equal condition there. Yeah, so actually everything you need to know is in the name of each of these solvers here. All right, so the next solver down, right, the long output is using a less than condition, and the short output is using a greater than condition. So let's open that up here. Here we go, right? So for the longs, it's using a less than. For shorts, it's using a greater than, right? So, and this time, the prices are reversed. So we're using the high price for longs, and the low price is for shorts this time. And again, you can tell by the naming convention. So I have, right, the first solver is using the low price first. So that's for the longs, and high price is next. That's for the shorts, and then we reverse things. So high price is for longs, low price is for shorts. All right, and then the next solver down here. All right, so again, this is all using all high prices, and for longs and shorts, all high prices. And right, look back is 2 for input A. Input B, the look back period is 3. Again, it's all in the name here. Right. And then the comparators also are in the name. So let's open that up. There we go. So for the long, we're using a less than. For shorts, we're using a greater than. And for the last solver here, right, it's using all low prices here, right? Price type long and price type short all set to low price there. And again, the look back periods are the same, 2 and 3. And then for the rules window here, there we go. So less than is for the longs, greater than is for the shorts. All right, so there's our follow-up for Wayne. Yeah, you're welcome, Wayne. Yeah, this was Wayne's question, by the way, in case anybody was wondering.